So hello and good evening or morning or afternoon. This is Ruth Pozuelo from Curbal.com and today I'm again for another DAX Fridays video. As you can see, it is today a Sunday, not a Friday. I normally publish this on Fridays, but the audio was way too bad on the video I recorded, so I have to reshoot this again, but better late than never, right? So in today's video, we are actually going to go through how to write DAX measures, how you should think about solving a DAX scenario. And it says part 1 because I'm going to do this in 3 videos. In today's video, we will write a DAX measure and then we optimize it. And in part 2, next Friday, we will actually create the same measure in another way. And on part 3, we will do exactly the same thing. We will create it on another way. And which way is best? It depends on your model and your DAX abilities, of course. So I hope that this will exemplify how diverse DAX is and how you can solve the same problem in many ways. And your model will determine which way you should actually write the measure. But let's not do this introduction so long. Let's actually begin the video, the tutorial. So in today's example, we're actually going to use Northwind Database. We use it on most of our DAX Fridays examples. If you're new to it, I will post a link below so you can actually go and check how to actually get this source, but you will be able to get this file from the description below, so don't worry about that. So the Northwind Database, it is just basically a company that, or a fictitious company that Microsoft created. So you can access it online, the data, and it is perfect for just learning business intelligence or, learning how to work with data, basically. So what we have here is a company that has orders. Here is the orders that they have. Here is the order details. So how many... for example, a company, we have here the customers, they buy something, and if they buy different lines, different products, we will see it here. And here we have a link to the product tables that has categories, and here we have our calendar, right? So it's like a super simple model. It is actually more complex than that, but this is the model that we normally use, I normally use. So we are going to answer a business question. So we have been asked, can you give us a measure that calculates how many customers, how many products a customer buy on average, okay? And to be able to solve that problem, I think it's always useful to do a few steps. Let's go through it. So for me, the best way to actually create a measure is to actually define it with words. So try to translate what the customer or your product manager or whoever gave you the task into words, and then try to find, okay, what actions do I need to take? So if we look at what they ask us to do, they say that they would like to have the average of product categories per customer. So what basically we need to do is to count for each customer the distinct count of categories. So we need to know customer A bought 3 categories, customer B bought 6, and then we do the average of both customers. So now we have divided the problem into 2 pieces, so we can actually start working on the smaller parts and to create the bigger one. So first we will calculate how many distinct count of categories per customer, and once we have that for each customer, we will do the average. You can actually go into the model and do that calculation manually. So for example, on March 1998, customer Bergs, and that is a customer ID, had 3 categories. So how do you do that? You can just go into the model, put together customer ID and category ID for a specific month. You have it here, there. And then you can see that, okay, manually, if I do this manually, I have this customer bought 3 categories on this month. So both category 1, category 7, and category 8. And when you do that, you will actually start to get an idea of what you actually need to do this calculation. You need to have a table with customer ID and category ID, right? So if you manage to create this table, you will be able to calculate what your, I don't know, colleague or product manager or customer wants you to do. So this is the table that we need to create to calculate. And the question now is, how do we create that table? So what is customer ID and what is category ID? If we look at our relationships, how the tables look like, we have an order details that contains the order ID and the product ID. And then we have an ordered table that contains the order ID and the customer ID. So a customer bought something and that order has several product IDs, and those product IDs have, each product has one category, so we can see if they bought one category, 2 or 3. But as you can see, we see that this is related, order and order details is related by order ID, and product and order details by product ID. This is how the model looks like. And what we need to do is to actually put together category ID and customer ID. So this is, from two completely unrelated tables. They are related through this middle table, but they don't have a direct relationship. So the question is, how do we actually put those two columns together to actually be able to do the count? And there are 1,000 ways to do it, really. I'm going to show you the most intuitive now, perhaps not the best, but the one that can get you going. And once you have that, then you will be able to optimize more and more, okay? So again, we need a table that is a customer ID from orders table and category ID from product table, okay? This is what we need to actually calculate the average, the average number of products or categories per customer. I wonder if I defined that right from the beginning. So how do we create that table? Again, there are thousands of ways. I'm going to explain one, the most intuitive, and then we will move on. So you can actually create that table using DAX, right? And one of the easiest way perhaps to do it is to use summarize. So you can have summarize, orders, customer ID, and then you actually say, when you put these two together, give me the distinct count of categories. And this way you actually get the table that we wanted from the beginning. So we will get basically this customer ID, and then we will get the number of categories per customer ID. So how many they actually bought in total, of course. So if we actually write these in our model, let's go and do it. So it is not just a theoretical video, it's also practical. So now we are here in Power BI, and I always think that the easiest way, at least for me, is to actually see these middle tables. To actually see them, not just imagine them on my head. And the more complex they are, I think the better to actually visualize it. And you can actually do it right here. You don't need to go to DAX Studio or anywhere else. You just go here to modeling, new table, and then you just write, this middle table that we want to create. So we're going to use summarize. And if you are not familiar with summarize, I have a video on that. It will show up on one of these corners, I think your right corner, and link below. So if you want to know how to actually write a function with summarize, just go there. It's like super easy. So you need a table, and then you need a customer ID from the orders table. And then we need number of categories. This is our measure inside the table that will do the distinct count of categories. Not there in the product table. Oh, it's too early in the morning. Category ID. And then you will calculate your table. You can actually go and look at it. And then we have our customer ID and a number of categories. So we've taken orders from our customer ID, so customer ID from our order table and category ID from our product table, which is exactly what we wanted, right? Order, customer ID from order table, and then category ID from product table. So we have those, and that has given us the table that we wanted, which is this one. Now that we have that table, the only thing that we need to do is basically calculate the average of a number of categories, right? So you just add the average and number of categories, and then you get your measure. So let's go back and do it. So we're actually going to copy this because we don't want to physically create this table. We just want DAX to calculate it on the fly. Okay, so let me copy it. I don't know why. Will it copy it? Okay, so we go to our order tables, we create a new measure, we call it summarize, and then we write average. And AverageX, I also have a video on it, right? How to actually do or use AverageX function. So link below, and maybe it will pop up something on the right, okay? So what you need is a table, and the table is the table that we just created. Is that summarize table. So we have average, we want to create the average on that table of the number oh my god, I shouldn't do videos in the morning, seriously. Number of categories. And then we close it. So if we put customer ID and then we put the summarized, we see that our customer bags here has the 3 categories, which is exactly what we expected for the year month that we have selected, right? We saw that before on the raw data. This is what we should get. And then if we go to February, we will get something else, and we will get something else. Okay. So this is great. We have now a measure that does exactly what our customer wanted. They want to have the average of categories per customer. So how many categories a customer buys. And perhaps you want to increase that or decrease, or why that is a useful measure, we take it in another video. But summarize is perhaps not the best function to use, and there is a long blog post by SQL BI where they actually explain how to best use summarize for better performance. If you have a small model, don't even bother, or do it for learning, but I mean your measure will work. But if you have started working with bigger models, you might run into performance issues. So what they actually say here is that you should use summarize and addcolumns combined. I'm going to post a link below to this excellent blog post, but I will summarize the content, at least for the purpose of our video, so you can see how to best utilize these two together. So the guys at SQL BI, what they're basically telling us is that summarize is not a very effective function and that it should be used combined to add columns. And they said you should summarize the columns that you need from one table, but when you're actually doing a calculation like we're doing, we're counting the number of categories from another table, use add columns for that. So summarize for getting a small table and then add columns to actually get the actual calculation and then put in that table together. So let's give it a go in Power BI and see how we do this. So again, I think it's like super useful to see that table that is being created. Even if then you're not going to use it, you're going to create it virtually. I really recommend you to, especially if you're a beginner, to actually create those middle tables so you can see them. Until you can see that the result is actually what you expect it to be. So if we write summarize with add columns as a table, then we write add columns. I have also actually a video on add columns function so you can know how to use it and how to write it. So it will pop up here or a link below. So what you need is a table, and that would be our summarize table, where we will have orders, the table orders. You need to, for summarize, you need always a table, and then we will have our customer ID from the order table, and that is the table that we're going to pass to add columns. And here we are going to calculate the number of categories, which is going to be exactly the same as it was before, a distinct count of products, category ID. So the only thing that we're doing is, instead of letting summarize do the distinct count, we're going to ask add columns to do it. And now we can go and take a look at that table and see that everything is working the way it should, and it is not. So as a standalone table, this will not give us the right results, but when we wrap this into the AverageX, it will. And let's do that first, and then we come back here to understand why this is not working and how to fix it. So we're going to copy first this. Sorry, I'm not using this DAX formatter. It takes a long time just to go back and forth, but you should use it. So we are going to wrap these into our measure. This is summarize add columns, and we're going to write the average X, and then we're going to write the add column summarize table that is going to be passed to AverageX. And then here it is the number of categories. And you'll see what happens in a second. So now this is the interesting part. Let me put it a little bit bigger so you can actually see something. So what you can see here is actually the summarize without columns worked when we were doing this row by row, but on the totals, it didn't work. And the reason for that is because the totals are not calculated on what you see here like it would happen in Excel. So it's not just going through these rows and then calculating the totals. It's actually going to create a table in the background exactly the same way that it happened with. So it's going to create this table and it's going to give us 8. So totals is basically this. And because this was wrong from the beginning, of course it is wrong on our measure. I actually have a video on explaining in a little bit more details why you get wrong totals. So I will link it down below. But hopefully you understand it. So once, as you are doing this row by row, the filters are being passed correctly to the AverageX. So you are forcing this to get this filter, but on the total you don't have it. So the customer ID table is not being passed, and by that it means that we will get the wrong results. So the question here is, how do we solve this issue with the wrong totals? And I mean, there are different ways to do it. The best way to do it is to use Calculate. Calculate has actually the ability to modify the filters that have been applied to a table. Okay? So if we create the exact same table, let's do that. We go to new table, and this is summarize, add columns, calculate. We have our add columns function. So this is, so you can read it better. And this was missing one of these. So we have, this is the summarize function that will create a table with just customer IDs. And then we have this number of categories with a distinct count with product category ID. If you remember, there is no relationship between, direct relationship between order customer ID and product customer category ID. And that's why you get this 888. But if you put calculate here, the filters, this customer ID will be passed to this distinct count product category ID. And that means that hopefully we will get the right results. So let's go and check it out. I think it's this one. And you can see that we're getting the right results. So if we go here, we copy this, create a new measure, and this is summarize, add columns with calculate. And now we pass the calculate in here. And we add it into our table, you will see that we're going to get the correct results. Now, you could decide that, okay, I just want to pass calculate to the totals because the other things are getting calculated just fine. And maybe this is a more effective way to do it. Then you can do that on this run tables video. That's where I show you how to do it. So it basically shows you don't need to pass calculate here, only when it is the totals are being calculated. So just go check that video out if you're unsure about what I'm explaining now. So yeah, now we have a summarize add column with calculate. So you can see from where we started, like we went this table to where we are now. So before wrapping up this video, there is actually one thing. The reason why these formulas work is because I have actually activated a double relationship between products and order details. And that is the reason why we can use the formulas like we have, or the functions. Let me show you, if we remove the double relationship, what happens. So we have here the three measures we created. We're super happy about them, especially these two that do calculate what we wanted to calculate. But if we go back here to the relationships table, you'll see that there is a double relationship here. If I remove it, none of our calculations will work. And Power BI from the beginning, they had these double relationships active by default. But of course, the people that were actually building big models, it was a pain because they are so ineffective. They should be just activated when there's no other way to do it. So the team in Power BI, they decided, okay, we go back and we just have single relationships by default. So you have to know when to activate this. And probably if you download my example, it won't be no problem because this will be activated, but otherwise you will run into trouble, basically. So once we activate a double relationship, you go from one to many, the filters will not be able to pass the other way without the double filter, with the double relationship, and then you won't get your results. But we will talk about more of these in part 3, basically. But I just wanted to make you aware of these. And with a small model, no problem, just activate double relationship, run for your life, that will be fine. If you have bigger models, you might run into performance issues, okay? So, this video has run already too long and I have delivered so many concepts that I don't want to continue on it. So this is part 1. What's going to happen in part 2? People that have been working with DAX for a while will say, Ruth, there is actually better ways to do that calculation. And of course there are. This was the most visual, I think, like the easier to understand. But there is many ways to do it. And in part 2, I'm actually going to show you how to use AverageX without the summarize function to actually do the same calculation. We're still going to keep the both relationship, but on part 3 we're going to actually remove the both relationship and we're going to create the calculations without the bi-directional relationships. It's actually possible, and I will show you just one way to do it. There are other ways also, okay? Maybe by part 3 I'll show you more ways, but for now I just prepare one way. So make sure you stay tuned to part 2 and part 3. By all means, give it a go to use AverageX by yourself, and then you just go back here on next Friday and verify it if you want. That would be like super fun. And also give it a go without bi-directional relationships and see if you get that going. You can download the example file below, so just give it a go. It's Friday. I mean, it's Sunday. What else do you have to do? So this is all for today. I hope this video won't give you a lot of headache. I really hope that it helps you understand a little bit more DAX and how DAX works. Make sure you don't miss part 2 and part 3. And if you like the video, just let me know by liking it. I know if I will help me know if I should do more videos like this, okay? Share if you want somebody else to know, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I publish 3 Power BI videos every week, and Fridays are especially for DAX Fridays. So make sure to subscribe, click the bell to receive notifications, and I'll see you on Monday. So have a nice Sunday. I hope I didn't destroy it. Bye.